part of a government that is focused on building a better Canada for all Canadians. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
The honourable member for Thunder Bay Rainy River will have 5 minutes period for questions and comments when the House next returns to debate on the question. Maintenant, nous allons commencer.
We will now move on to member statements. The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the terrible flooding in Quebec over the last several days is unprecedented. Thousands of people evacuated, roads closed to all traffic, houses under several feet of water, fields completely flooded. This is indeed a terrible natural disaster. Allow me to call attention to the courage of those affected and the unity of Quebecers. Difficult times such as this one say a great deal about a people. We are united. Sometimes we don't agree, but when tragedies happen, like the one that's affecting tens of thousands of people today, we stick together. We are there for each other. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I want to say to everyone affected by the flooding that our hearts are with you. Thank you to everyone who is accomplishing extraordinary work. It is highly admirable.
For Oakville.
Mr. Speaker, on June 11th, I hope everyone in the House will be watching the Tony Awards to cheer on Come From Away, a blockbuster musical now on Broadway that's been nominated for 7 Tony Awards. This phenomenal hit was developed and produced in my riding of Oakville at Sheridan College. The idea for the musical originated with Michael Rubinoff, Sheridan's Associate Dean of Visual and Performing Arts, and was developed through Sheridan's Canadian Music Theatre Project. Mr. Speaker, only 5 Canadian musicals have made it to Broadway. Sheridan is the first post-secondary institution to have a Tony Award nomination for Best Musical to their name. I am proud of the hard work and dedication that the faculty and students of Sheridan have put towards making Come From Away the immense success it is today. I also stand with my colleagues from Newfoundland in honouring the generosity of the people of Gander who were there in a time of need. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Prince George Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today I rise to recognize a special constituent of mine named Mary. Mary was born at the end of World War II and raised in the small BC prairie town of Dawson Creek, third child of a homesteader farmer accountant. She was taught early on the farm that hard work and taking care of the needy was just something you did, and soon was volunteering as a Sunday school teacher, youth leader, and later working as church secretary and seniors care home administrator receptionist. Mary's faith in Jesus Christ inspires her to care for others, from those who showed up at the church doorstep to seniors needing a haircut and a friend, to hosting countless families in her home for dinner after church on Sundays. She now keeps busy going for walks with friends at the local walking track and being there for her husband of 52 years and her 2 grown sons and 4 grandchildren. Mr. Speaker, as we approach Mother's Day, I rise today, I'm going to try to get through this, to recognize a woman that taught me honesty, to work hard, integrity, and to never give up. Thanks, Mom, for all you do and have done for us. We love you.
The honourable member for Sault Ste. Marie.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in the House today to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the St. Mary's Ukrainian Catholic Church during Canada's 150th year. The church was built in 1917 by Ukrainian pioneers who dreamed of a safe and welcoming place of worship. Many of them arrived in Sault Ste. Marie to work at Algoma Steel and made the neighborhood of Bayview their home. The St. Mary's Ukrainian Catholic Church has a unique history. The church was started by 18 Ukrainian families and is supported by local Polish, Croatian, Italian, French, and English residents. Father Jerry often boasts that volunteers have made and sold millions of pierogies and cabbage rolls to the residents of Sault Ste. Marie to help the church grow, leading to the headline in our local media, "The Church That Pierogies Built." As we celebrate the 100th anniversary, I'm proud to say that their mantra of living in faith and community still holds strong today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo. The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, as the Member of Parliament representing CFB Comox, it is my pleasure to honour the distinguished guests joining us to celebrate Air Force Day on the Hill. To those here and to those back home, I want to share my deep appreciation for the work you do. It is an honor to express my sincerest gratitude to your enduring commitment to our country. Whether you are in a foreign theatre standing up for our shared values or at home saving lives by carrying out important work like search and rescue missions, I know Canadians stand proud. In the process, you put your own lives at risk, the most significant dedication. While your reach is far greater than all of our ridings combined, know wherever you fly, this House represents the collective acknowledgement of the work you do. Beyond kind words, the best way to truly thank you would be to invest. Let's make sure the Government of Canada is there to support you. Happy Air Force Day on the Hill.
Here,
The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to share with you all of my compassion for the people in my riding, Argenteuil-La-Petite-Nation, as well as all of the regions affected by the flooding that has occurred over the last few weeks. My colleagues and I fully share the sorrow of our fellow citizens for the difficult time they are going through. I would like to sincerely thank the officials of various municipalities, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, members of our Canadian Army, support organizations, and most of all, the many, many volunteers for their constant work with those affected. I can only wish for a swift return to the normal state of affairs. To all those affected, no matter to which degree, hang in there. Mother Nature has demonstrated yet again that she is powerful, but the tireless work of various stakeholders, volunteers, and the Army is even more so. Our hearts go out to you, and above all, we will not give up.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Canadian flag is a symbol of the unity of many peoples with different backgrounds, ethnicities, and religions in one land who share common liberties and values. In this, the Canadian flag is a symbol of the identity of our nation. Many Canadians have fought for our rights and these freedoms under the banner of our flag, and there is no law in Canada against defacing our flag. This, in and of itself, is a mark of the freedom we enjoy. However, as we prepare to celebrate Canada's 150th anniversary, our flag will be front and center in the celebration of our nation, of our values, and of our pluralism. And in this, I ask all Canadians to be respectful of our flag. When you wave a Canadian flag that has been altered or disgraced to advocate for one cause or another, ask yourself if it helps or hinders your cause, given that there are many countries where their national flag is a symbol of oppression. If your heart even has a small inkling that this is wrong, don't do it. Instead, celebrate our nation, many people of many viewpoints and passions united under one flag, our Canadian flag, in the hope of continued freedom and peace.
here, here.
Honourable Member for York Centre.
Mr. Speaker, May is Ontario Jewish Heritage Month, a month when we can all take great pride in celebrating the accomplishment of Jewish Canadians in communities big and small across the province, including my own riding of York Centre. This month recognizes the important contribution of Jewish Canadians to settlement, development, and growth of Ontario. Jewish Heritage Month is an opportunity to remember, celebrate, and educate future generations about the role that Jewish Canadians have played and continue to play in Ontario communities. May also marks the centennial anniversary of the UJA Federation of Greater Toronto. In 1917, the first iteration of the United Jewish Appeal was founded, and today it is the heart of the Jewish community in Toronto, overseeing or partnering with over 50 Jewish organizations and programs throughout the GTA. On the occasion of this centennial, I want to congratulate all the board members, professional staff, and volunteers who make UJA a fixture in the Jewish community.
The Honourable Member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in support of Air Force Appreciation Day.
As a former Air Force officer, a daughter of a Major General in the Air Force, a wife of an Air Force fighter pilot, I can proudly say that the Royal Canadian Air Force is a core part of who I am. After starting in 1914 as the Canadian Aviation Corps and then becoming the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1924, Canada's Air Forces have served honorably for 100 years. I want to thank those in the Air Force who protect our freedom both at home and abroad. It is an honor to serve one's country, and with that honor comes great responsibility. Les hommes et les femmes
The men and women of the Air Force understand this responsibility and sacrifice their lives to serve Canada. Thank you for your strength, your loyalty, and your service to Canada.
Ad Astra, through adversity to the stars. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to stand today in support of National Hospice Palliative Care Week 2017. Hospice palliative care is about living well right to the end. 70% of Canadians have no access to such services, but we have the power to change that, Mr. Speaker. My private member's bill on palliative care comes back to the House tonight for third reading. This bill has been supported by all parties in the House, and I hope to have your support again this evening. Bill C-277 creates a framework that will define the services to be covered, the training needed for different levels of care provision, the data and research needed, support for caregivers, as well as a comprehensive plan to get access for all Canadians to palliative care, so that each of us can choose to live as well as we can for as long as we can. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians from all walks of life recently participated in activities in support of Mental Health Week. As chair of the Liberal Mental Health Caucus, I know that 1 in 5 Canadians cope with some form of mental illness. Among them are elderly, Indigenous people, youth, individuals in correctional institutions, and our veterans. Addressing mental health illness requires more than a week. It needs a full-time commitment from all levels of government, the healthcare professionals, and our communities. That's why the federal government, for its part, is working to make a mental health initiative through Canada. Through Budget 2017, it has allocated $5 billion to support this initiative. With a focus on youth, the funding will also help 500,000 young Canadians. I urge all members in this House to continue working in their communities to ensure that Canadians needing mental health support receive it and will be able to live productive and healthy lives.
The honourable member for Ottawa West Nepean.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to call the attention of this House to the deteriorating crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Yesterday, the UN Humanitarian Office announced that there are 3.7 million internally displaced persons in the DRC today, with an increase of over 100,000 in the last week alone. 1.9 million children are malnourished. There is widespread use of sexual violence, and 40 mass grave sites were found in the past few months in Kasai, where 2 UN investigators were brutally killed in March. I've worked in the Congo, where I met the late Etienne Tshisekedi, who in his final days showed the Congolese people the path toward a peaceful transition of power. I call for full implementation of the December 31st Accord, an end to the violence and human rights abuses, and timely, transparent, free, and fair elections. Thank you.
Member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to bring to the attention of the House the 2016 audit of anti-Semitic incidents made public today. Sadly, this marks the 35th year of the audit, and it's clear that anti-Semitism remains a stain on the honor of Canada. 2016 was the worst year in recent history for anti-Semitism, with 1,728 incidents recorded, a dramatic 26% increase over 2015. Most troubling is the anti-Semitic culture, which has become widespread at university campuses. Last year, there were numerous anti-Semitic or neo-Nazi guest speakers invited to campuses, and university staff were suspended for several anti-Jewish social media posts. In one extreme case, the Jewish community at McGill University was told to cancel its Purim celebrations by a BDS activist. It is disheartening that university campuses, which are supposed to serve as forums for free speech and diversity of beliefs, have succumbed to the poisonous brew of hatred and anti-Semitism. I want to thank B'nai B'rith Canada for this report and call upon all members to heed their findings and work towards ending anti-Semitism in Canada.
Honourable member for Sackville-Preston-Chesapeake.
Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to rise today to speak about volunteerism in Canada. It's extremely important to recognize their contribution to their communities, to their province, and to their country. If we think for a second how any activities we participated in the last month, how many of those activities were supported by volunteers is great. Ici, on vient juste de vivre sur...
Here, on the ground in British Columbia, in Ontario, in Quebec, and in New Brunswick, we've gone through flooding, and volunteers are the ones who came to contribute. And there are many young volunteers who participate. 66% of youth volunteer on the ground.
I participated in Sackville and Waverley at 2 evening recognition for volunteers, and in both areas, over 20 organizations recognized 20 people in each one for their work, hard work. So just today I want to recognize 13 million Canadians contribute through volunteerism, and the total 2 billion hours in...
The Honourable Member for Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Rise to honour the life of Robert Manuel, a veteran of the Korean War, community activist and longtime resident of Elliott Lake. Bob initiated recognition for Canadian Peacekeepers Day in Ontario, but is best known for his work to have Vimy Ridge Day acknowledged as a National Heritage Day in Canada. A week before his passing, he was Master of Ceremonies as Royal Canadian Legion Branch 561 marked the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Vimy Ridge. Bob had an impressive string of volunteer contributions, whether with the Legion, Korean Veterans Association, Navy League, Chamber of Commerce, the Terry Fox Foundation, and more. Bob always gave his all. His patriotism always shone through, and his neighbours will miss his unique display of the Canadian flag on Canada Day. I feel fortunate to have known and worked with Bob over the years, over 20 years, Mr. Speaker. He was a special person who was committed to his community and will be deeply missed by his comrades and family. I ask all members to join me in honouring Corporal Bob Manuel.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, many hundreds of Falun Dafa supporters assembled in front of Parliament today for the millions in China who have suffered since Jiang Zemin launched a campaign of brutal, deadly persecution of Falun Gong practitioners 18 years ago. Sun Qian, a Canadian citizen arrested and abused for her beliefs in February, is only one of the latest victims. Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government must balance its narrowly focused pursuit of trade and speak up publicly to condemn China's chronic denial of fundamental human rights. Canadians should work toward a day when human rights advocates are no longer considered enemies of the Chinese state, when Chinese television no longer broadcasts confessions obtained through blackmail and torture, when political prisoners are no longer subject to organ harvesting. A day, Mr. Speaker, when the tenets of Falun Dafa and Falun Gong can be spoken out loud in Tiananmen Square. Zhen, Shan, Ren, truthfulness, compassion, tolerance.
Honourable Member for Canada Carleton.
Mr. Speaker, like so many Canadians, especially in Ontario and Quebec, I spent this past weekend in Constance Bay in my riding Canada Carleton helping with flood efforts. While it's heartbreaking to see the loss of homes and property, it was so inspiring to see the enormous outpouring of compassion and generosity. At one point on Sunday, we had over 600 volunteers from right across the region, eager to load some of the 128,000 sandbags deployed, prepare and deliver food and supplies, or donate the use of their vehicles. Liberals, New Democrats, Greens, Conservatives, all leaving politics behind with a single goal in mind, to help their neighbours. We could all learn a lot from them. To all the people affected, I want to say that we all stand with you and we will offer all the support we can. And to all the volunteers who once again demonstrated the very best of human kindness, I simply say thank you so very much. Merci beaucoup.
Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, no one, it seems, to know what the Prime Minister's infrastructure bank will look like. He says it's going to be used to build new projects and attract private investments, but the Liberals have demonstrated that they cannot achieve existing projects, and private investment already exists across the country. They don't need a government bank to do this. Could the Prime Minister explain why he's going forward with this scheme? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, during the last election, we made a commitment to invest in infrastructure that Canadians need. We put in place a plan for $180 billion in coming years to invest in infrastructure across the country. But we know that even these record-level investments will not be sufficient to fill the need. That's why we consulted the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, provincial entities, unions, various construction and engineering organizations to develop a mechanism to deliver on infrastructure. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Infrastructure Bank boondoggle is just another taxpayer-funded Liberal vanity project. I know that they're excited to impress their friends on Bay Street and Wall Street, but it's one thing to buy them tickets to a Broadway show. It's quite another thing to buy them a $35 billion bank. Right. Mr. Speaker, has the Prime Minister forgotten that his job is to serve regular working people?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of underinvestment in investments in communities across this country, we were pleased to put forward a historic record amount of investment into infrastructure across this country, and understand that even the $180 billion we're going to be putting towards infrastructure in the coming years won't be enough to meet all the needs, which is why we were happy to work with the FCM, with unions, with constructions, with banks, to look at how we can leverage dollars even further to build the kind of infrastructure that's going to help quality of life and economic growth for the middle class and those working hard to join it.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Liberal insiders, investment bankers, $35 billion in tax money, and Liberal politicians who have control over how the bank is actually run. What could possibly go wrong? How can the Prime Minister not see this blatant conflict right in front of him?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, provinces, territories, municipalities have been asking for a federal government that is a partner to them on building infrastructure after 10 years of a government that was a terrible partner to Canadian municipalities and provinces. That's why we work with municipalities and provinces. That's why we work with interest groups, with unions, with a broad range of Canadians to figure out how we can meet the infrastructure needs of our communities, of our small businesses, of our growing economy. We're going to deliver for Canadians what, unfortunately, 10 years of Stephen Harper was unable to.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has a troubling need to hand out tax dollars to people who don't want it or don't need them. His night out on Broadway with Ivanka Trump included buying tickets for executives from some of the biggest banks and law firms in North America. Now, these folks have a lot of money. In fact, they usually support the arts themselves. They could easily have paid for their own tickets, and maybe they would have if asked. So why did the Prime Minister think taxpayers needed to foot their bill?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the United States and Canada share deep ties that go back through economy, through history, and the opportunity to celebrate how we work together and deepen the relationship between our two countries was extremely timely. Particularly showcasing Come For Away, which is a success story both for the Canadian arts scene, but also to share the story of extraordinary Newfoundlanders who stepped up during a very dark time in our shared North American history. This is something worth celebrating, something worth highlighting, and a big part of demonstrating the strength of Canada-U.S. friendship.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Order.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we have found out that the government ordered 14 full-size cardboard cutouts of the Prime Minister. Now, I'd like to give him a chance to explain this, but I'm worried that his explanation might fall flat. And, Mr. Speaker, he's not going to be able to just paper over this with his explanation. So instead of his one-dimensional answers, will the Prime Minister tell us, shouldn't this idea have just gone into the recycle bin?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we made a commitment to re-engage on the world stage, and since I spend so much time in the House of Commons, Mr. Speaker.
Order. It's nice to see members in a good mood, of course. But let's listen to both the questions and the answers. Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the differences between us and the previous government is we believe in giving our diplomatic missions the independence to make their own decisions and to make their own choices. That is something that matters on the world stage, to trust our diplomats to represent us well around the world and respect the choices they make.
The Honourable Deputy.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
The Liberal platform says that the so-called infrastructure bank will, quote, provide loan guarantees to provinces and municipalities to ensure that the projects are built. Funny. Nothing in here about corporations profiting from public infrastructure. They must have left that out by accident. The Liberals have so far refused to answer this question, but I'm sure that today the Prime Minister will be crystal clear. So, will Canadians face user fees or tolls so that rich, private corporations can get their cut? Yes or no?
Yes. Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians need a broad range of infrastructure investments across the country in public transit, where they buy tickets, in terms of delivering power lines in which we pay fees, and also infrastructure like roads and bridges that are toll-free. In order to meet the needs of Canada's investments in infrastructure than what Canadians and communities need, we are looking at many different ways, including historic investments of $180 billion over the coming years in infrastructure, but how we can even push that money further, how we can create more infrastructure that's going to benefit Canadians is what we looked at.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Yes. From middle-class Prime Minister to middle-man Prime Minister in one fair swoop.
Let's imagine for a moment that the Conservatives are in power, and we find out Order, please. I know that members like these comments once in a while, but we do have to stay calm here. The Honourable Member for Outremont. Imagine that, and then we find out that the federal government is holding secret meetings and behind closed doors with private companies to cook up the implementation of a new program to privatize infrastructure. The Liberals, and especially the member for Papineau, would have been the first to denounce this for being pure conflict of interest. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, all the government did was listen to Canadians a lot more, consult them, and try to figure out how to deliver what our communities and individuals need. In order to establish the infrastructure bank, yes, we consulted financial institutions, but also unions, municipal governments, provinces and territories, yes, the World Bank, yes, financial institutions for Aboriginals. We consulted engineers and construction companies. We consulted a lot of people to deliver the goods to Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we found out today that this Prime Minister would be the architect, the sole architect of this about-face by Trump on NAFTA. It seems that Donald's son-in-law reached the Prime Minister's office to ask him to phone his father-in-law in order to, as if this had all been arranged behind the scenes like in the movies. Will the Prime Minister deny that this is just a PR exercise by Donald Trump and that our Prime Minister is playing an extra in this whole thing? Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect us to be there to defend Canadian interests at all times, and that's exactly what we do. We have constructive relations with the new administration in order to work together on problem issues, but also to resolve those problems and give us opportunities to protect Canadian jobs and grow our productive relations for both countries' benefit. That's exactly what I'm doing, and we will continue to do that with all our partners around the world. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Kushner, I guess. President Trump imposed massive tariffs on Canadian softwood, risking hundreds of thousands of Canadian jobs. The Prime Minister apparently didn't see any of this coming. He did nothing on this important file until this phone call from Trump's son-in-law. So the next time the Donald gets cranky, is the Prime Minister just going to stand by the phone and wait for his directions from Jared?
Right, Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, in every single meeting I've ever had with an American president, I have brought up softwood lumber as one of the very first things that we want to address to, including my very first meeting and phone call with Donald Trump. We continue to engage at the highest levels on this important issue because it's a matter of Canadian jobs, it's a matter of communities, it's a matter of prosperity, and it's a matter of fairness, Mr. Speaker, and that's why we will always defend Canada's interests.
Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean.
That's leadership. One meeting between the former Prime Minister Harper and President Bush, and he fixed the issue for 10 years.
We don't need that many meetings, but Mr. Speaker, in those days, no province had to appoint a representative. This is a federal government job. The federal government did its job. Today, the provinces don't trust the federal government. Alberta went to Gary Dewar, the ambassador to the U.S. They're showing leadership. When will the federal government do the same? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's important to remember that it was the Conservative government that let the accord expire. This tariff imposed by the Commerce Department is punitive and unjust. We will go before the tribunal and we will win, as we always did. With regard to the provinces, we are working closely with them and their representatives. We want a good agreement, not any agreement. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the exact facts are that the agreement expired during the election campaign in October 2015. The former minister had already started discussions with partners. We didn't wait. We were on the job. We are living in a virtual world. Doesn't matter if you have you promise a $10 billion deficit and you think that budgets balance themselves. They're not talking about balanced budgets anymore. They're shoveling the spending of today into tomorrow. When will they take into account the future of our youth instead of mortgaging them? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, the priority of our government is to make judicious and responsible investments in order to strengthen the middle class and grow the economy, preparing Canadians for the economy of tomorrow. There are encouraging signs that our plan is working. There are 250,000 new jobs created. When you look at unemployment, the unemployment rate dropped from 7.1 to 6.7%. Our plan is working, and we are continuing forward. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal Prime Minister believes that there should be one set of rules for him and his rich friends and another set of rules for the rest of us. Middle-class Canadians and those working hard to join it don't get free Broadway tickets paid for by taxpayers. Ordinary middle-class Canadians just get stuck with the bill. So why did the Prime Minister bill taxpayers $30,000 to buy Broadway tickets to impress his elite friends?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Let me tell you,
Mr. Speaker, who were some of the government's guests at Come From Away. One of them was Claude Elliott, the mayor of Gander, who oversaw the setup of the emergency operations. Another was Durham Flynn, the mayor of Appleton, who hosted passengers in his own home. Another was Diane Davis, a former teacher who organized her co-workers, students, and volunteers into housing nearly 800 people. I am proud of the work of these Canadians, and I was proud to help showcase it.
Order. The honourable member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is so out of touch with ordinary middle-class Canadians that he thinks $30,000 for Broadway show tickets is a great deal. His minister claims it's to honor the generosity of Newfoundlanders. However, average families in Newfoundland and Labrador are struggling to pay their bills. They can't afford luxuries like Broadway tickets. Why is it that every time the Prime Minister needs to impress his fellow elites, he whips out the old taxpayer credit card to show everyone how big it is?
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, let me tell you about some of the other great Canadians whose work and generosity and greatness of spirit was honored and recognized at that Come From Away showing. Beulah Cooper, who was there, her generosity led her to being nicknamed Florence Nightingale. Oz Fudge, he's the municipal police officer who recreated Disney World for stranded, terminally ill children. And Brian Mosher, he's a high school teacher who put together 12 live shows for local cable. I was proud to stand with these Canadians and see their greatness honored.
Honourable member for Huron-Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After the Prime Minister spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, taxpayers' dollars, on his personal travel, $30,000 on Broadway tickets. Worse yet, yesterday we find out the Prime Minister spent $2,000 on cardboard cutouts of himself. I mean, what's next? The cardboard cutout of the Defence Minister? The Prime Minister needs to get serious, he needs to cut the waste, and he finally needs to get to work for Canadian families.
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I'll tell you what getting serious means. Getting serious means working incredibly hard in a whole-of-government approach, in an approach which has been bipartisan, to reach out to our U.S. allies and neighbors and to be sure they understand our Canadian values and they understand the history of our close relationship. That is getting serious. And getting serious is honoring the great people of Newfoundland. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hello. Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
$2,000 of taxpayer money for life-size cardboard cutouts of the Prime Minister. The laughable excuse given by the Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Vanity Project cited the need to champion the values that Canadians hold dear. Does anyone buy that these two-dimensional cutouts somehow champions our values? Other than this laughable excuse of an answer, will the Prime Minister commit today to putting these cutouts to good use? Place them in his seat during question period 5 days a week, and maybe then Canadians will get answers to their questions.
Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, our government is absolutely committed to working hard to advance the Canadian national interest and Canadian values around the world. We have focused in particular over the past few months on our relationship with the United States with a huge effort involving, yes, our colleagues on the other side of the House in reaching out to our American partners and neighbors. Canadians know that this effort is absolutely essential, and I want to thank our diplomats for the hard, creative work they're doing to support us.
Honourable member.
Sainte-Marie.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, I have two very simple questions for the Defence Minister. Did he himself make the decision to not hold a public inquiry on Afghan detainees, knowing there would be a conflict of interest because of his role as an intelligence and liaison officer in Afghanistan? And if he did not take that decision himself, did he also withdraw from talks, since he would have been a major witness during a potential investigation. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Canada is proud of the work of the men and women in uniform, as well as the civilians who served in Afghanistan. Throughout these operations in Afghanistan, Canada committed to make sure that all detainees by the Canadian Forces be treated or transferred in accordance with our legal international obligations. Canada's policies and procedures about detainees have already been the subject of various examinations, including by the Federal Court of Canada and internal mechanisms of the armed forces.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve clear answers about this decision not to hold a public inquiry into the transfer of detainees. So, in the absence of a real answer to that question, let me ask the obvious follow-up. Did the Minister of Defence inform the Conflict of Interest Commissioner of his role as an intelligence and liaison officer with local Afghan authorities who were known torturers when she inquired about his possible conflict of interest in quashing an inquiry into the transfer of Afghan detainees? If not, what alternative facts did he convey to the Commissioner?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, we agree that under the former government, transparency was deficient. As the member knows, all opposition parties, except the previous government, had an opportunity to look at 40,000 documents on the question. The NDP chose not to participate. In the past 10 years, the issue of Afghan detainees was the subject of great attention. Many different entities have investigated this, including one that's ongoing. We look forward to looking at the results.
Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Secretary got that wrong completely. Veterans and Canadians are calling on the Defence Minister to resign for habitually using alternative facts. There's a motion before this House calling on the Defence Minister to step aside, but demonstrating complete disrespect for our brave men and women in uniform during the debate on this motion. The Defence Minister refused to acknowledge his wrongdoings. When will the Defence Minister do the right thing and resign?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Defence is a former reservist. He will always have great esteem for the Canadian military, both those that he was close to during his mission and those who served under other commands or at other times. It's up to the government and minister to make sure that members of the Canadian Forces have all the equipment necessary to accomplish their missions and all the support necessary for their welfare. This policy will allow us to fund the Canadian Forces adequately for the next 20 years.
Mr. Speaker, we thank the Defence Minister for his service as a veteran, but his service as a minister has been deplorable. The minister has taken away danger pay from our troops. He fabricated a capability gap for our fighter jets. He made misleading comments about our mission in Iraq, and he has embellished his service record himself. The Defence Minister just can't keep the facts straight, Mr. Speaker. This is a massive problem when he's tasked with our national security and entrusted with the care of our deployed armed forces around the world. How can the families of the brave men and women of the Canadian Armed Forces trust this Defence Minister with the lives of their loved ones when he so blatantly...
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. Mr. Speaker, we'll make sure that Canadian military have all the advantages to carry out their mission. This government has retroactively remedied the danger pay as well as the tax credits under Operation Impact. We are examining pay scales and pay policy. We are trying to ensure a fair and equitable system for all. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. I'd like my colleague to listen to the question before so he can have the right answer. Yesterday, the Minister of National Defence did not answer questions about his integrity, so let me try again. The Minister violated the Code of Ethics and Values of the Canadian Forces. The code says that in order to be honest, you are to avoid any kind of scheming and respect high ethical standards. That's what the minister did not do. The minister has no more integrity left. When will he resign? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The minister underscored his prime responsibility, and that of the government is to make sure that the troops have the support and training and equipment they need to carry out their various missions. For a year and a half, that is the objective of the minister, and that is what he endeavors to do every day. One of the key elements of his mandate is to give our country a new defense policy. We are ensuring that this is properly funded and that costs are rigorously established for the next 20 years. The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Since he became a Liberal, the Minister of Defence has forgotten what truth is all about. He's a master of alternative facts. That's concerning since he's at the head of the Royal Military College in Kingston, whose motto is truth, duty, and valor. He cannot give an example to recruits. If he has 1 ounce of dignity and honour left, his duty is to resign because he's the laughingstock of the Canadian Forces. It's unfortunate for him that he's gone from a hero to a zero. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of National Defence received a broad mandate that he is carrying out. Soon he will unveil a new defence policy that will mean that our military will have proper equipment and everything they need when they're sent on a mission. In the past year, we have listened to Canadians across the country. We've had an in-depth analysis to have a model that responds to the needs of our military.
West Kootenay, South Okanagan, West Kootenay, that's it.
Mr. Speaker, a state of emergency has been declared in the community of Grand Forks, British Columbia, because of flooding. The surrounding boundary region has also been put under emergency watch, and homes and farmlands are being flooded by the rising water levels. The situation stands to get worse by the end of this week. Can the Prime Minister reassure constituents in my riding that his government will provide the necessary resources and assistance if and when needed? Thank you.
The Minister of Public Safety.
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. The Government Operations Centre in my department is closely in touch with their counterparts in the province of British Columbia. The situation is being monitored very carefully, and we have indicated to the province of British Columbia if they need federal assistance, it will be provided, and we'll give our answer instantly.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi-Bay James Nunavik. Mr. Speaker, on April 21st, the Quebec government decided to transfer a herd of some 15 woodland caribou to a zoo in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. This was despite the opposition of people living in the region. More than 14,000 people signed a petition to that effect. Neither the Quebec government nor the federal government consulted on this file. What is the government doing to protect this endangered species? And has the Minister of the Environment been requested to intervene in this file? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We are committed to working with the provinces, territories, and Aboriginal peoples to protect endangered species in Canada, including the caribou. We are using conservation measures based on solid plans that are science and evidence-based. The provinces and territories are responsible for managing these lands and the species that live within them, and we support their efforts to develop conservation measures that are based on best practices.
For Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A historic $180 billion has been committed to building much-needed infrastructure in communities right across Canada. Residents in my downtown Toronto riding of Davenport are looking forward to public transit projects such as the Downtown Relief Line. They're also looking forward to more bike infrastructure, such as the further expansion of the West Toronto Rail Path and the creation of the Green Line. Can the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities update this House on how the government's infrastructure plan is helping communities not only in Davenport but across Canada?
Well, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member from Davenport for her question and her hard work. Our government is making historic investments to build strong, sustainable, and inclusive communities from coast to coast to coast, including $25 billion in public transit over the next 11 years. This funding will support next generation of public transit projects, including active transportation across Canada, and we look forward to signing agreements with our partners. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for South Surrey White Rock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Not only is there a significant conflict of interest with the Liberals' infrastructure bank, chief economists are now questioning the bank's necessity. Taxpayers are on the hook for $35 billion and will be paying up to 12% in profits to the very same insiders who designed the program. The bank will only be required to report to Parliament twice over the next 10 years. That's twice in a decade. Did the Liberals shut down debate on this legislation today so they could avoid talking about this blatant conflict of interest?
Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, our government understands that how critical infrastructure is to grow our economy and create jobs. That is why municipal sector, provincial sector and territorial sector is supporting our plan, including the creation of the infrastructure bank to build more new infrastructure that has been neglected by the previous government for a decade. As far as reporting is concerned, the bank will report to this Parliament on an annual basis. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have provided us with a buffet of conflicts of interest. The Prime Minister visits the Aga Khan's private island. No problem, say the Liberals. There are fundraisers with lobbyists and ministers. The Liberals say it's no problem. And now the Minister of Infrastructure, behind closed doors, has set up a bank with foreign investors. Once again, the Liberals don't think this is a problem. Mr. Speaker, when will the Liberals learn from their mistakes and finally put an end to these conflicts of interest?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
The presentation that was made to institutional investors is publicly available. I hope the member get to read it. Right? As far as the bank is concerned, we consulted with various stakeholders. We consulted with FCM, we consulted with World Bank, we consulted with IMF, we consulted with the provinces, trade unions, businesses, because we understand that we want to craft an institution that will deliver on the expectation of Canadians to build more infrastructure to grow our economy and create jobs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
Well, they say in their budget that there's roughly $2 trillion worldwide in private sector investment looking for infrastructure projects. If that's true, then why do they need $35 billion more from taxpayers? Well, look at Division 18 of the budget. It will tell you it's for loan guarantees. That means the billionaires get all the profits off user fees, while taxpayers get all the losses off of revenue shortfalls and cost overruns. Why do the billionaires get all the profits while taxpayers take all the losses?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the reason that we're getting a lot of support from the municipalities and provinces for our infrastructure plan is because they have seen the impact when you don't build proper infrastructure, when you don't maintain the infrastructure that you have, your economy hurts. Jobs are not created. Your people are stuck in traffic. People are spending more time unproductive. That is why we want to build more infrastructure on top of the historic investments we're making to catch up with a decade of neglect that the previous government did not pay attention to. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Carleton.
One has to wonder if the minister's comments here today were also vetted by the billionaires who want to set up this bank. According to documents obtained by the Globe and Mail, those billionaires who will profit off this taxpayer-funded bank are directing staff and officials in the minister's office on its design. Their instructions are simple. They get all the profits and taxpayers get all the losses. Why is this government giving $35 billion tax dollars for a bank that is of billionaires, by billionaires, and for billionaires?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, I am amazed at the lack of understanding on the part of the honourable member how the infrastructure plan works in Canada. We support municipalities to build infrastructure. We support provinces to build infrastructure. They're the one who procure the infrastructure. They're the one who decide how they're going to build the infrastructure. We have added an additional tool to support them in order to make sure they have the necessary tools to meet the expectations of their citizens on whose behalf they build their infrastructure. I would encourage members to actually...
The Honourable Member for Vancouver East.
Stripping law-abiding former refugees of their permanent residence status simply because they travel back to their country of origin is so wrong. Close to 300 people whose citizenship applications are on hold because of this.
These are law-abiding people who have committed no crime, violated no immigration laws, and passed all requirements to become Canadian citizens, and they're being targeted for cessation. Will the government halt these proceedings of current cessation applications and repeal these absurd laws?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, Canada's refugee system is widely acclaimed as one of the best in the world, and we recognize that there are always improvements that can be made to strengthen our protection of refugees while ensuring that we preserve the integrity of our asylum system in Canada. Mr. Speaker, our government consulted with stakeholders and examined current policies in order to make improvements to our current asylum system. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, the UN is facing its worst humanitarian crisis in South Sudan. 100,000 people's lives are in danger and millions are facing famine. Canada is heading towards record lows in terms of its international aid commitments, and the finance minister is saying we need to do more with less. Worse, the government is taking $300 million from aid programs to pay for a bank controlled by the Minister of International Trade. In short, they're giving nothing to help solve this crisis. Does the minister plan to reinvest this money quickly to help save lives? The Honourable Minister of International Development. I'm very proud that last week, with the Prime Minister, we announced the creation of an institution for the improvement of development. After in-depth studies, we decided to create a subsidiary of Export and Development Canada, because we decided that would be the most efficient and effective mechanism for aid. This will allow us to give more money for international aid and sustainable development by creating new partnerships with the private sector. Thank you.
Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Speaker, reports released yesterday show that Canada is on track to receive double the amount of asylum claims in 2017 than it did last year. Many of these claimants will enter Canada by illegally crossing the U.S.-Canada land border. This is a record high, and using 2013 as a benchmark, only 38% of these asylum claims will be accepted as valid. When will the Prime Minister finally act to stem the flow of illegal border crossers so that Canada's resources can be better directed to support the world's most vulnerable?
I'm proud of our government's commitment to help those who are fleeing war, terror, and persecution. As you know, our government is committed to setting up a fair and equitable asylum system, and the Commission recently received new measures and instructions about having shorter and more effective trials. This will lead to greater productivity. These measures are being put in place without compromising the integrity of the program.
Eagle Creek.
Mr. Speaker, it is now being reported that the government will not renew the lapsing measures of the Fair Rail for Grain Farmers Act before they sunset on August 1st. Shippers are getting very nervous as they are being forced to negotiate contracts while the law is in flux. The Transport Minister keeps telling them that legislation is coming, but shippers continue to be pushed down the line. Why are the interests of grain farmers so low on the Liberals' priority list?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, our government understands the scope and importance of the grain sector, and that's a strong rail-based supply chain system is absolutely essential to all Canadian producers and shippers so they can remain competitive in domestic and international markets. As such, we carefully consider any actions required to further strengthen the safety, efficiency, and competitiveness of Canada's transportation service. Consultation and collaboration with stakeholders has been key to help develop a solid agenda for transportation in Canada.
Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Well, Mr. Speaker, last year the Transport Minister and the Ag Minister stood in front of a microphone to tell Canadians how important an efficient and reliable grain transportation system was. That's why the Fair Rail Act was put in place in the first place, to make the system work for more than just the railways. Now the Liberals have deliberately delayed until important provisions for Western Canadian grain farmers expire. Why didn't they tell producers a year ago that their idea of efficient and reliable was giving the railways all the powers and taking it away from the producers?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I'll reiterate that we understand that this is very important to Canada's economy and to our grain farmers and to our shippers. What we needed in the past, we had this adversarial relationship. Now what we're trying to do is get the people to the table, consult, collaborate, and come up with a solution that works for everyone. That is what we're going to do, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. Mr. Speaker, as we know, flooding has devastated many parts of the country, including in my riding, Rivière-des-Mille-Îles. I would like to thank all of the volunteers and first responders who have provided help over the last few days to ensure that citizens and communities are kept safe. Can the Prime Minister inform the House of the most recent measures taken by our government to deal with this emergency? Thank you. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for Mille-Îles for her work both in this House and in her community with all of the help that's necessary there. We're thinking of all Canadians affected by these floods, and we thank all volunteers and first responders. Over 1,000 members of the armed forces were deployed to Quebec, and hundreds of thousands of sandbags were distributed in Ontario. In addition to our work on the ground, we have announced that $1 million will be donated to the Red Cross to help provide emergency support.
We're pleased to announce that the federal government will allocate $1 million to the Red Cross to help with immediate relief.
Honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals promised that cozying up to Iran would get results. That even though the Iranian regime boasts about funding terrorist proxies, its rogue ballistic missile system, and proclamations aimed at the destruction of Israel. That even while Canadian resident Saeed Malikpour languishes in an Iranian prison. Now we learn the Liberals have sent diplomats to Iran, perhaps to fulfill another misguided campaign promise to open an embassy our Conservative government closed because of the security risks to diplomats. Why?
Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, the best way to advance human rights and consular issues in Iran is by talking directly with the regime. By raising these issues directly, we're holding Iran to account. That is what I did yesterday in my conversation with the foreign minister and what our officials will do this week. And let me be clear. We oppose Iran's support for terrorist organizations, its threats towards Israel, its ballistic missile program, and its support for the murderous Assad regime in Syria. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Order. The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Mr. Speaker, according to a CIBC report, caring for aging parents costs Canadians $33 billion a year in out-of-pocket expenses and time taken off work. Budget 2017's non-refundable caregiver tax credit doesn't help those who disproportionately shoulder the task of caregiving, women and those of lower income brackets. With a rapidly aging population, that figure of $33 billion is expected to grow. Why is this government turning a blind eye to the impact of our country's changing demographic?
Honourable Minister of Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm delighted for this opportunity to express once again our pride in the very strong record that our government has in supporting seniors since last year's budget and since last month's budget. We have put into place measures, Mr. Speaker, that take hundreds of thousands of seniors out of vulnerability through the increase in the CPP. We're also investing significant resources in supporting the housing and the health care needs of our seniors. We're working very hard, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that all our seniors live in a dignified and a secure retirement.
Member for Central Nova.
From Capomule, Quebec to Surrey, PEI, from Digby, Nova Scotia to St. John, New Brunswick, from Caribou, Nova Scotia, in my riding, to Wood Islands, PEI. Federally funded ferry service in Eastern Canada are crucial to the economic growth, business development, and tourism of local communities. For far too long, we have taken an inconsistent patchwork approach to funding these services. Can the Parliamentary Secretary please inform my constituents and all Canadians on how this government plans to invest in ferry transportation services and grow Atlantic Canadian communities?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Central Nova for his important question and for his advocacy. Our government understands that from visiting friends and family or getting goods to market, middle-class Canadians in Atlantic Canada rely on safe and efficient ferry services. That is why, with our announcement last week, seeking industry feedback, we are reinforcing our commitment to implementing a long-term approach to provide high-quality and reliable service, give certainty for users and communities, and to grow regional economies.
Honourable member for Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I asked the Minister of Innovation if he would stand up for the Canadian economy and help free the beer. He claimed that alcohol was part of the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. He misled the House. Beer, wine and spirits are not part of the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals have a chance to be the architect of unleashing Canada's economy. They just need to act as an intervener in the Supreme Court case in a Canadian free trade. I'll ask again, will the Liberals stand up and help free the beer?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of our government in working with the provinces and territories of signing this really incredible deal with them to have a Canadian Free Trade Agreement. And part of that Canadian Free Trade Agreement is a working group to liberalize alcohol. So we were very clear. That's why we have the support of the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. We have the support of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. We have the support of Canadian exporters and manufacturers. And we have the support of Beer Canada, because we made sure that we put liberalizing alcohol as part of the Canadian Free Trade Agreement.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher et Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the President of the Chamber of Commerce of Montreal has come to the same conclusion as us. There's no one in this government defending Quebec's interests, no one defending our forestry sector, opposing Energy East, fighting against federal interference. No one is standing up for Quebec. How is it that the Prime Minister's finance minister, a great friend of Bay Street, has more influence defending Toronto than 40 Liberal members have defending all of Quebec? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for his question. Our government's priority is to make wise and responsible investments in order to strengthen the middle class and to grow the economy, and to prepare Canadians for the economy of today and tomorrow. If we look at the job creation over the last year, for example, over 250,000 new jobs were created. And we know that the unemployment rate since 2015 has gone from 7.5% to under 7%. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The President of the Chamber of Commerce of Montreal said there is no one defending Quebec in the federal government. My colleague just said this, and this applies to nearly all files. Will anything change? Will the 40 Liberal members from Quebec stand up and be heard, or will they simply defend Toronto's interests? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're very proud of our investments in infrastructure, $1.1 million over the last year. 224 projects were financed. And the most important thing is that Quebec has money from the federal government. Thank you. It being 3:05, pursuant to an order adopted on Monday, May 8th.
A member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie is standing on a point of order.
The Leader of the Official Opposition made reference to a particular document. Now, it's a very large document, and I'm not sure that every member has yet had a chance to review it. Now, it is, as is the practice in this House, I would ask for unanimous consent to table in both official languages the document that was referred to.
I know the honourable member for Grand Prairie Mackenzie is a stand-up guy, and that he won't want to break the rules by using props in the future. As I was saying, order. 15 heures 7.
As it is 3:07 p.m., pursuant to the order made Monday, May 8th, 2017, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion of Mr. Bazan regarding the business of supply. Call in the members.